Hello everyone, back tuning into today's video. We've run out of things to talk about for this Sunday. Normally I would do a longer range update of some description, but it's just one of those Sundays where between updates. So we did Buchanan 6 update last week, got CFS 6 months okay to do next Sunday, and after that we've got updates coming up as well. So it's just a free Sunday. I thought we'd have a bit of an eclectic mishmash of stuff. We're going to look at the oceans, we're going to look at ENSO, we're going to have a quick look solar activity and Arctic sea ice, and then have a look at the weather for the next week to 10 days and through into the latter stages of June as well, CFSB2. So you're going to be a lot to get through, and it's going to be going from one thing to another, and I hope you enjoy the video. A little bit different to what we normally do here on a Sunday at Gas Weathers. Before I get on with that, just to say about the ads, there's links to articles on all the pages. Have a browse through the widgets and click through the links if there's any articles that you are interested in. And thanks very much for doing that. This video adds to most pages, which own that content. When you watch me close back up again, helps to pay for the website. There'll be the second update for Glastonbury Festival coming up this evening. So if you're interested in what the weather may be doing for Glasgow, come back for that around 7 o'clock this evening. Going to start off with the oceans then. This is the latest sea surface temperature anomaly map from NOAA for the world. So we've got the Atlantic, of course, over here. That's the Atlantic Ocean there, and the Pacific Ocean is over here. The two areas that we specifically look at is the Northern Atlantic, because that influences our weather, and of course the ENSO region, which is just here from Peru over towards Indonesia. So we'll start off with ENSO first of all, and we see that we are very, very gradually shifting away from El Nino. We've got this little area of blue appearing here across the equatorial part of the Pacific Ocean. It isn't yet a cold event, it's not yet a La Nina event, but certainly it is cooling down there. It's a slow old process though, this. And even if we do eventually shift in towards La Nina, I'm not sure it's going to be quick enough to have that much of an impact on our summer. If you transition quickly from El Nino to La Nina, such as we did in 2007, for example, then it does seem to coincide with an increased probability of a cool, wet, type summer. Because we've got a much slower transition taking place this year from El Nino to La Nina, that's assuming we ever get to La Nina. We may not do, it may never actually be designated because it doesn't quite reach the criteria. But whatever happens with that, the transition, I don't think it's really quick enough to be able to say, but whatever happens this summer is really down to the La Nina transition. We may have a cool and unsettled summer. I mean, that is like the default setup for the summers in the United Kingdom, generally changeable and relatively cool. So we may have that kind of a summer. But if we do, I don't think we'll be able to pinpoint it down to the El Nino to La Nina transition. Elsewhere in the Pacific Ocean, we've got this warm anomaly up here, up towards the northeastern part of the United States, or the northwestern part of the United States, I should say. That's come back a little bit. That was cooling down a few weeks ago, but it is, we are seeing the temperature anomalies lifting up a little bit there, to be honest. So again, we've had this warm anomaly up here, and it's generally quite a cold place in the oceans, interestingly, but we've had this warm anomaly for 2 or 3 years, and it still continues for the time being, at least. I thought it was probably on the way out a couple of months ago, but it's still there and it's still hanging on. In the Atlantic, we've still got the cold blob. Look here in the central part of the Atlantic Ocean, we've still got this cold anomaly, and then underneath it we've got quite a lot of warmth this year through the equatorial part of the Atlantic, or I should say the tropical part of the Atlantic. This is the equator just here, so it doesn't actually go down to the equatorial part of the Atlantic, but the tropical part, which is this area just here, is looking quite warm, and I will think that's going to give us a bigger hurricane season this year. We've had about 3 really quiet hurricane seasons. The last big one was in 2012, but we've got more warmer water there through the tropical Atlantic this year, and I wouldn't be at all surprised, particularly as we're shifting, albeit quite slowly and quite weakly, but we are probably shifting into some sort of La Nina event. So I reckon that the weak La Nina and the warm anomalies in the tropical Atlantic will probably combine to give us more in the way of hurricanes. This is how things are looking, actually, in terms of the tropics in the Atlantic. And you see it does look quite warm there with the anomalies, really from Africa over towards the Caribbean, generally warmer than average temperature anomalies. And that is the breeding ground for the hurricanes. And of course, hurricane season starts in July and finishes in November, so it's a little way off yet. But I reckon we'll have a bigger season this year, especially as we've got this very gradual change towards La Nina taking place. The setup that we've got in the Atlantic, I'm not sure it's all that good, really, for a hot summer. This cold blob in the Atlantic probably promotes some sort of a ridge just here, but we've got a fair amount of warm water here now around the UK and going down into Spain and Portugal, and I think that will probably promote low pressure. So I would suspect we'll have a ridge here, and then the jet stream going through here, and maybe areas of low pressure being generated here. Not sure about that, but that's how my interpretation of those anomalies will be. By the way, we'll be looking at the North Atlantic oscillation for the winter of 2016-2017 in a couple of weeks. I'm going to do that on Sunday, the 3rd of July. That really is the start of thinking about winter, and we begin to look at how the anomalies are stacking up in the North Atlantic. And we look to see exactly whether we've got warm and cold areas and where they are in the northern part of the Atlantic, and then from that we create a forecast in terms of the North Atlantic oscillation, just one particular element of the winter updates. We create a forecast based on those sea surface temperature. That will be on Sunday, the 3rd of July. So be quite interested to see what we think is going to happen with that, I'm sure. Back to ENSO. The SOI is all over the place, really. This is Southern Oscillation Index, and this is an index that reflects the state of the atmosphere and the oceans between Darwin in Australia, Tahiti in the central part of the tropical, or I should say the central part of the Pacific Ocean, down in the Southern Hemisphere. So when it's negative, it's telling you that you're in an El Nino type setup in the atmosphere. When it's positive, you're in a La Nina type setup in the atmosphere in the Southern Ocean of the Pacific. So on the 6th and 7th of June, for example, very negative with the SOI, minus 16, minus 29, indicating very much an El Nino type setup in the atmosphere on those days. Just coming down to recent days, though, the 9th and 10th of June, gone very positive with the SOI, indicating more of a La Nina type setup, plus 19, plus 18. And generally, I think we're trading blows, really, between positive and negative SOI numbers. But there's no definitive shift either way. And whilst we do not see a definitive shift in the SOI to positivity, it means we're going to struggle to get La Nina going, because the oceans do want to go towards La Nina. But the atmosphere is fighting against it at the moment, and when you get these two fighting against each other, it delays the progress of either El Nino or La Nina. So I think we're going to struggle for the time being anyway until we see a definitive shift to a positive SOI. I think we're going to struggle to get La Nina going. Let's have a look at solar activity, and this is how things are shaping up to May 2016. This is the solar cycle's sunspot number progression chart from it's from NOAA, I think, this NOAA, and you can see that we are dropping down towards solar minimum now, which you would expect. Of course, solar maximum occurred a couple of years ago back here. Been generally downhill all the way, although it's not a linear process, so we do get spikes upwards while the general trend is down. And we continue to move downwards. The red trend line here tells us that we should be going down at this point in the cycle, solar minimum occurring sometime around here, 2018, 2019. So we're not far away from going into solar minimum of course. We're not in solar minimum yet, but we are trending down in that direction. A few days ago, we actually had some spotless days on the sun, indicating that there was no sunspots for 2 or 3 days, and that is the kind of thing we'll be seeing more and more of during the coming few weeks, months and years. I'll be doing a new solar update probably sometime in July or August, where we'll get several charts together and see exactly what's going on with the sun, particularly compared to that solar cycle we've been looking at past few years, which was solar cycle 12, the old solar cycle from 1878 to 1890. We've been trending very close to that solar cycle with the current solar cycle, number 24, very recently, and we'll be looking at that in Solar Sunday probably in a few weeks' time. Watch this space on that one. And just to say, the reason we look at the sun, reason we look at the solar cycles and sunspots, is that when we're in solar minimum, or very often just coming out of solar minimum, but when we have a quiet solar disk, it generally coincides with an increased risk of blocking. So our colder winters, and we tend to get them in batches, those batches of colder winters tend to coincide with periods where we have weak solar activity, particularly when we're around or coming out of a solar minimum. Arctic sea ice next. This was posted in the comment section of Gas Weatherings, actually, by Scott last night, and I found it quite interesting. I thought I'd just throw this one in. We're seeing a big loss of Arctic sea ice at the moment. We are well below average for this point in the year. This is where we currently are. And we compare that back to past years. Just here, those years are on the side. We can see we are trending well under the trend that you would expect at this point in the year. So it doesn't look like it's going to be a great year for Arctic sea ice. It's probably down to El Nino. When you come out of an El Nino, of course, El Nino spikes the temperature of the planet. It's kind of the Earth's thermostat at work. When you get an El Nino, temperature will shoot up. When you get a La Nina, temperature will go down. So it's kind of like the Earth's thermostat going up and down. And when you get an El Nino, the year after it very often is a bad year for Arctic sea ice. So I would suspect we're going to have a lot of melt this year. You get concerned about these things, about the Arctic sort of thawing out. Well, it could be a bad year this year in terms of that. This is another chart. Again, this is from the National Sea Ice Center in America. Just showing that again we are under trend in terms of Arctic sea ice. The black line is where we are for this year, 2016. These coloured lines are the 10-year averages, and you can see we are trending under average for that as well. So it looks like at this early stage, it is early days, and it may not be as bad as it appears it's going to be when we get towards the main part of melt season, which is August and September. But at the moment, early days, it looks like it's going to be a very bad year for Arctic sea ice. Let's have a look at CFSV2 for the next month. These are 500 millibar height anomalies broken down into weekly periods. This is taking us from the 11th through to the 17th of June. So the coming week. This one is showing a trough of low pressure around the UK and Western Europe with a fair amount of northern blocking. Actually, the jet stream's on a southerly track. That's pretty cool and pretty unsettled for the coming week. There'll be a lot of heavy rain in with that one. Week 2, 18th, 24th of June, that shows low pressure running through the UK again with jet stream. So that's looking unsettled once again, blocking to the north of us. Week 3, which is just here, a little bit of a change, still looks unsettled, but the trough is centering more towards the west with this ridge building over Scandinavia, and this allows the winds probably to go more into the south or southeast, a bit like that. So I would think still relatively changeable because of this trough of low pressure, but maybe quite warm. You could get some southerly, southeasterly flows coming in with that of the continent. Of course, the continent's going to be hot at this time of year, so that implies at the very end of June, start of July, may well turn warmer. And then we go through to to week 4, which is the 2nd through to the 8th of July. Very hard to decipher much from this, but obviously we've got some sort of area of ridging in the central Atlantic and possibly up towards Iceland as well, which I would have thought is going to do that to the jet stream. So although it doesn't show any green or blue over the UK, it doesn't show a trough, I would have thought that probably does imply the chance of some sort of a trough there with a risk of cooler and more unsettled conditions. So it looks a relatively changeable and unsettled month ahead, to be honest. The generic charts, finally, we're going to have a look at the weather next week to 10 days before we go. This is the GFS for Thursday. Trough of low pressure over country. It's going to be an unsettled few days to come. There'll be showers, longer spells, rain and thunderstorms. I may update Stormwatch later. Excuse me. We go through into Friday. That trough moves away and it turns the winds into the north. Could get quite a cool shock coming up at the end of the week, just for a day or two. Could see some really cool temperatures, especially at night. I don't think we'll get frost. I don't think you have to worry about frost, but it does look very cool as we go through to the end of the week. Then into weekend, we're going to get a bit of a ridge building across the country, and that starts settling things down and warm them up over weekend. So for England and Wales, this looks a nice weekend next weekend. If you want to get your barbecue out this weekend, don't despair, you should be able to get it out next weekend. Although Scotland and Northern Ireland still plagued by these southwesterly winds, so a little bit more unsettled then. We go for it today, 10, which is Wednesday, 22nd of June, and we're still showing a ridge very close to the country. So this looks quite good, actually, from the GFS this morning. Once you get to the weekend and into next week, it does look quite a bit better. The East WF, again, trough of low pressure over country for Thursday, clears away on Friday and opens the door to this northerly wind, which will be unusually cool for the time of year. Over weekend, the ridge gradually extending in off the Atlantic, so that starts to settle things down, although it's a little bit less progressive, actually, in building this ridge up next weekend. So even here on Sunday the 19th of June, we're probably still playing with fairly cool northerly winds, maybe even some showers in the east. But eventually the ECM does get there into the start of next week, so this is into Tuesday the 21st of June, when that ridge is building nicely for England and Wales, though Scotland and Northern Ireland is still being plagued by low pressure. And that ridge looks like it's building in very, very nicely there up to Wednesday the 22nd, which is day 10. Will be a drier and warmer spell then. So, well, that's it for today's Sunday Roundup. I hope you enjoyed it. We've whistled through quite a few things. I've been able to follow it okay. As I say, it's just one of those Sundays where I've been between longer range updates. So, hope you found the video interesting. Next Sunday, we'll be doing the CFS 6 months look ahead, just for fun. The Sunday after that, which is the last Sunday of the month, we'll do the first model roundup for the autumn. So that'll be quite an interesting one. And then the week after that, I think it's the 3rd of July, Sunday the 3rd of July, is when we'll do the North Atlantic oscillation forecast for the winter of 2016-2017. So we've got plenty of stuff lined up for the coming Sundays. But hope you found today's video interesting. That's it for now, and later on, as I say, I'll be doing the next Glastonbury update. There may be a Stormwatch update as well, if I've got time, so come back for all of that later on. That's all for now, and thanks for